Good morning. You're tuned in to Aluta Continua here on CKCU 93.1 FM. I'm Monique. Thanks for joining us this morning. My guests this morning are jury president Zach Chabot from the Ottawa Canadian Film Festival and director, editor, and film producer Kelly Saxberg, who joins us from Thunder Bay. Good morning to you both and welcome to Aluta Continua.
Good
Good
morning.
morning.
Thank you.
Kelly, well, let's start with you. What is the story behind your recent documentary, Silent Cries?
The story actually begins with another film, which we're currently just finishing, called A Tale of Two KIAYUNIK. And KIAYUNIK in Inuktitut means Southerners or white people. And that film I am co-directing with the director of Silent Cries, which is Navalik. She's a residential school survivor and Inuk from Cambridge Bay, Nunavut. And her and I are working on this other film, which is kind of a reconciliation project of bringing sketches of a woman from Thunder Bay, where I live, Susan Ross, who went in the 1970s and later on until the 80s all over Nunavut, and she sketched the people there. And our project is bringing those sketches back. And working with Navalik, and we had been friends for a while, she asked me to accompany her when she was going to travel to Iqaluit for the Pope's apology. So of course we thought, well, we should document this very historic moment and then tell her very personal story about as a residential school survivor and the connection there.
Kelly, you mentioned the main character of the film, Navalik, who
Right.
is quite compelling. And she's also credited as the director and producer on the film, along with yourself. You're credited as the producer, I believe, and editor?
That's right. Yeah. So we were, and I shot it. So and it's very intimate, kind of personal project. And it's our kind of like our relationship together, but also because Navalik has been for years and years, she has participated in all kinds of organizations that are struggling for Inuit rights and human rights and all the rest of it, education and the situation, the struggles of Inuit people and specifically Inuit women. She also is a journalist. And so when I talked to her about this project of bringing back these sketches from Susan Ross and her friend Sheila Burnford, who went there and wrote books, she right away she saw the value in this, and it's working together. And also, like, through these sketches, and there's a little scene in the film where Navalik is looking through these sketches, and she is sort of triggered by memories of, for example, the plains, and picking up. There's so many sketches of children, and these children just being picked up from the land and being taken away forcibly to residential school. And where she went, she was taken far away from her community to Inuvik, and then later on to Yellowknife, and where she lost her language and went through all these different struggles. And we just sort of, it was a journey for me to really learn that, but learn it not as somebody who's from the outside, who's heard about it and read about it, but actually meeting people and meeting survivors and seeing the life conditions and hearing her story, that we work together to tell this story. And definitely Navalik is in the director's seat because she knows, what parts of the story need to be told and how to tell it. I go there with my camera skills and my editing skills. So we've got a really great partnership. And we've, in fact, started a company, Tulloch Productions, inspired by her son, who she lost. We're making these films to make a difference and promote reconciliation.
What I find really interesting about your partnership, Kelly, is that in working with Navalik in the way that you're working with her, you're giving her autonomy over her own story and her own experience. How important is it that we make space for women storytellers?
Well, as somebody who's been telling stories as a woman and about strong women from the North, uh, it's critical because if you look at mainstream media and you look at even the film industry, you're going to see that it has always been dominated by men, and it's not like that those struggles haven't led to many more women's voices, but it's still an absolute struggle. I mean, the first film that I made as a director, full-fledged funded film was Rosies of the North, which is about women who built airplanes here during the Second World War. And Elsie McGill, she's the first woman engineer in Canada, and she's the first woman in the world to design a plane, and she was disabled through polio. And she headed this giant factory during the Second World War. Well, nobody wanted to give me money for that film because it's like, oh, that's a quaint local history. And that's what I've been faced with for the past like 30 years. Now, if you take all of my resources and my ability to get funding and have a partner who supports me in every way, but you look at somebody like Navalik, who has been a journalist, writing and having to relearn her own language, and basically being very poor and living in a small, tiny community, those barriers are even greater. And I think one of the things that we're both so proud about of telling this story, and kind of obviously because we are women, we are telling the story from a women's perspective, that we're going to make sure that we pay attention to the other women in this story in particular.
Zach, I'd like to pull you into this conversation.
Yeah.
Why do you feel that it's important to have a festival focusing on Canadian stories?
I think that for a long time, Canadian cinema was seen as a second form of entertainment in Canada. We always tend to like watch American content or American films. And I think focusing on Canadian cinema and the amazing talent we have up here is just amplifying those voices and gives these people opportunities to showcase their talent and their work. And with this year's 8th edition, I think it's one of the strongest lineups we've had. And there's so many great stories around Canada that might not be told if it weren't for a festival like the Ottawa Cane Film Festival.
What was this year's selection process like, Zach?
So myself and the 3 other jury members, we went through around 200 films. We had 180 shorts and about 20 features. Everybody watched every single film. And the process was very much, we gave it a rating out of 5. And if the average score was above 15, it went on to the next round. And then we'd have discussions about the films that had 15 or above. And from there, we created a list of about 40 films, which were sent out to the filmmakers. And from there, my job came in to figure out a program that would work. We had about 3 or 4 programs that could have been possible. We finalized the program in June, and from there we ensured that we were able to get the films and have as many filmmakers as possible come to the festival, because at the end of the day, you can't have a festival without movies, and you can't have movies without filmmakers. So we really like having the filmmakers there. So that's one of the things that really drove the final program, and in general just drives the festival. So we have about 10 of the 16 films that are there have a representative. So every single night there's going to be a Q&A after with filmmakers, and you're guaranteed to have the filmmaker in the audience with you.
Kelly, I want to come back to you and pick up on something that you mentioned concerning reconciliation. In your estimation, how are we as communities and also as a country addressing reconciliation? Uh, Are we making strides towards greater reconciliation?
I think so. I think that it's always at a personal level. It's got to start with, of course, just listening to these stories and getting to know our Indigenous neighbors and workmates and friends and also like obviously there's sort of like the educational component of it, but it's actions and deeds that really make a difference. So I think even though I don't think much of actually the Pope's apology, it seemed like a big propaganda move on the behalf of the Catholic Church. But when you watch this film, what you do get a sense of is it was so important for people to get together, to be recognized, to be, to have those stories seen and to tell directly to the Pope what has happened to them. But I think, like for the general Canadians, it was a really good opportunity for people to become a bit more knowledgeable and listening to those stories and participating in your own community. I mean, there isn't a community, across Canada that doesn't have a large urban Indigenous community. And one of the reasons I'm so pleased that this film is being showed at OCAN is that Ottawa has the largest Inuit community outside of Nunavut. And there are literally thousands of Inuit. And the other thing I'm really proud about is that this gave me the opportunity to organize an Inuktitut screening, which we're doing with the Inuit Women Sewing Group. So we're going to be showing that after OCAN on the Saturday. And we're also bringing these Susan Ross sketches because she sketched all over Nunavut. As Navalik said, they're really a healing force, that sort of tangible, and to talk to, especially to bring them back to elders who are obliged to live in the city of Ottawa because there aren't medical facilities once you're elderly, or if you have dementia or any of that mobility issues. You're obliged to live in Ottawa, and it's almost impossible for your family to afford to be able to come to visit you. So any connection with your culture, your language, all of that, making those opportunities happen, that is all part of reconciliation and sharing that wealth of documentation that people in Nunavut, they couldn't afford cameras. They didn't have but all of these like Southerners who went up and documented things and took photographs and in our case, the sketches are something truly remarkable and special. To be able to bring that back and connect with people is really critical, and also just any opportunity for people to get together in their own language and share their culture and invite non-Indigenous people to take part of that. That is the very best step forward, is that kind of community sharing and actually literally getting to know people and coming out and meeting people. It's really too bad that Navalik, she did get a grant to come to the festival, but she was working this summer on a cruise ship that she does that goes through the Northwest Passage, and she was chased by a polar bear and she was injured. Anyway, so she's unable to attend.
Well, Kelly, we hope that Navalik is doing much better after that incident this summer.
Yeah, yeah, she is. She is. Just not ready to travel so much.
You've mentioned the sketches from Susan Ross a couple of times. Who was Susan Ross? And tell us about her sketches.
Susan Ross was Robert Flaherty, who created the classic documentary Nanook of the North. He was her uncle. She is from Thunder Bay, and actually Robert Flaherty, he was born in the States, but he grew up in Canada, and his parents moved to Port Arthur, which is Thunder Bay. And his sister married a local guy, and he always had contact, and he inspired Susan, who, she passed away quite a while ago, but she was born in the beginning of the last century. And so he helped put her through art school. And then, Robert Flaherty, I mean, he's so famous for Nanook of the North. But he not only made that film, it's not like he just flew in and made that film. No, he lived with the Inuit in that area for years and then created that film. And he also photographed Indigenous people and all across northern Canada and northern Ontario. So Susan was definitely inspired by this. And then she also had a friend who is Sheila Burnford. And Sheila Burnford, she's a Scottish writer, but she emigrated to Canada after the Second World War. But she wrote The Incredible Journey, which most of your listeners, under 50 would know as Homeward Bound. Even they might be too young for that. But it's a big Disney movie about two cats and a dog. Well, she wrote this book. It was like the bestseller, one of the bestsellers of all time, in fact. But these two women were best friends. And they went to a lot of reserves. They wrote a book. Susan was friends with Norval Morrisseau, the great painter from Northern Ontario, Indigenous painter. And then they finally got their opportunity to go to the Arctic and go to Pond Inlet. And when Susan and Sheila went, and they got to go twice, and they even went narwhal hunting. They went by dog sled. They did everything. Susan sketched everybody. Sheila eventually wrote a book about it and all the people that she met and what she learned. And then Susan carried on for another more than a decade, going to all these communities and sketching and then doing art from it. Anyway, one of the other very interesting outcomes of this, of Susan going up there, is that she met Robert Flaherty's Inuit grandchildren. So she made actual connections to the Inuit in a family sense, and then maintained those connections. Robert Flaherty never went back with his to see his son, but that son, Robert Flaherty's son's children, were part of the one of the most horrific events of Canadian history, which is the relocation of the Inuit from the Inukjuak area to Grise Fjord, on an almost uninhabitable area, which is and there's a great film if you want to know anything about this. It's called Martha of the North, as opposed to Nanook of the North, and Martha would be Robert Flaherty's Inuk granddaughter, and she's also the translator for our film, Silent Cries.
Full circle.
Yeah, full circle, and she has maintained her family, her brothers, and her and her sister. They have maintained connection to Susan's family. Her son Tom Ross, who went up with his mother on the last trip to the Arctic and met, their family, and that's a true, just got to be the most wonderful kind of reconciliation story that there is, and if we all see each other as family, we would never ever let those things happen to our family. The 60s scoop, the residential schools, all of that kind of stuff. If we understood each other as one big family, we would never have let that happen. That's what I truly believe. So I think, all of this is steps toward that.
What a wonderful preview, Kelly, to your upcoming project. We've got a few moments left. And Zach, I want to ask you about the closing film. What can you tell us about Bobby Singh Brown's Stealing Vows?
It's everything you could imagine in a movie. It has music, it has some crime, it has some romance. It's very much a heist movie, but at its core, it's a love story, and it's very much inspired by Bollywood cinema, which I think is some of the greatest movies out there are Bollywood cinema. So I think it's going to be a great taste for the Ottawa audience, which has a huge community of of Indians in Ottawa. So I think it's going to be I, I hope it's going to be a great turnout for this film, especially by the community. But I think in Ottawa in general, I think there's going to be a lot of fun with it for sure.
And finally, Zach, can you give us the lowdown on some of the logistics? What are the ticket prices? Where can people get tickets?
You can get your tickets either in person at the Bytown the day of the events or beforehand, or you can get them online at ocanfilmfest.ca, and there's a link to navigate to buy tickets. You can either buy single day tickets or you can buy a festival pass.
Thank you very much to both of you for joining me here on Aluta Continua this morning.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
That was Ottawa-based filmmaker and jury president Zach Chabot from the Ottawa Canadian Film Festival and film producer, director, editor, and cinematographer Kelly Saxberg. Kelly has worked on over 100 films. Her short documentary, Silent Cries, is part of the short program at this year's OCAN Film Festival. We reached Kelly in Thunder Bay. Thank you for joining us this morning, and please visit ckcufm.com to donate to our funding drive and help keep programs like Aluta Continua on the air. That's it for this edition of Aluta Continua. I'm Monique, signing off until next week.